Hello and welcome to another video. Last time I showed you the Phase 2 Pico W controller PCB and reran some tests. If you'd like to catch up, here's the video in the card above so you can catch up. Now I had planned to make this into a multi-parter, but I decided, because of how brief the tests will be, to make it into a single part. In this video we will run the BLE test that failed the last time. First I will show you the setup, run the basic and bidirectional communication tests to show functionality, and then run the potentiometer and button tests. I will link the Medium article referencing this in the description, including the GitHub repository that we use for this video. This includes the code we will be using as well as the repo for the PCB. So let's get started. Alright, first here is the setup. Now on the Pi 4, I have the blue virtual environment, and as you can see, I have it in a separate directory. So what I did here is I installed Bleak in the blue virtual environment. All I had to do was first create the virtual environment, then activate it, and then install Bleak, which is what we've used in previous tutorials. On the Pico, I didn't have to do anything except I did have to install Pico 0, which is right here. So I had to install it as a separate file, and everything else is already set up. This includes BLE, so I don't have to do anything else. So everything is all set up here. So all we need is the code. So the setup is pretty much done here, so let's just get to the demos. Alright, forgot to do this section here, but I need to explain the code for a bit. So for part 1, for the basic communication, just use BLE sample and of course PyLED receive. Just use these two. You don't need to use BLE time if you don't want to. Again, I will link this in the description. And for communication, for bidirectional communication, it's best to use PySend receive. And of course, this one says Pico A2.py, but you can change this to whatever you want. Yes, it's pretty much just the same code for bidirectional communication. Now for potentiometer control, which is right here. So it's called LED value, but I had it as another name, but yes, use this for the LED brightness. And then this is still the same, so use this code on the Pico. And of course, on the buttons, of course, use button LED here, and then use Pico receive. So this is the code you will use. So again, I will have all of this in the description. So I apologize for not making clear which code you should use. So back to the video. Alright folks, so let's get started with the first demo. So here we have BLE sample. Now this code is used to send data to the Pi. And I've covered this before in a previous tutorial, so I will link that tutorial in the card above. And of course we have cat pi receive, which is the other code we will need. This one will receive data. I also covered that in the same tutorial. So now let's just get to run it first, because we want to establish functionality. So we'll run the Pico, and you can see it's starting to advertise. So we'll run the code on the Pi. It's connecting, so we'll just have to wait for it to run here, and there you go. So it's connected and the code is mostly working. So this is exactly what I expected. So the demo works just fine, so I'm going to exit out of here. And we're done here. So that's it. So let's move on to the next demo. Alright folks, let's move on to the bidirectional communication. So here I have BLE dual, which is the code that we send and receive data from the Pi to the Pico. Oh, sorry. And on the Pi we have Pi send receive dot Pi, which does the same thing. So now let's run the code here first. Alright, so let's go run it here. So we'll run Python 3 Pi send, and then we'll wait for it to establish communication. Alright, and you can see it is now working. I just wanted to briefly show you that it still works. So we can stop here, and then we can stop this code, and there we go, it has now been stopped. So basic and bidirectional communication work just fine. So in the next two parts we will work on potentiometer and button control. So let's move on to potentiometer control. Alright folks, so let's get started with this demo. So I'm going to run the Pico first. Alright, next I'll run the Pi. Alright, so I had it set to half, but let's go back down to 1. You can see the brightness go down to 0. Now we can take the brightness all the way up. And now let's take it down to 0 again. So that's it. So let me just exit out of the Pi. That's out of the Pico first, and then the Pi. And that's it for the demo. Alright, let's get to the next and final demo. So we'll run the Pico code first, which is called button receive in this case. And then I'll run Pi button. So we'll do Python 3 Pi button. And it should work now. So I'm going to hold the button here. So let's press the button. I know you can't see it, so I'll just lift it up. And yes, the LED is working perfectly. No issues here. And as you can see through my finger, the button is working just fine. So there you go. So now let's exit off the demo. So I'll exit the Pico. And then I will exit the Pi. And that's it for the final demo. So as we can see, the board now works with BLE. As I mentioned before, I originally wanted to separate them into different videos, but I decided to combine them into one. In the last part, I will show you the board controlling a Raspberry Pi robot with BLE. See you next time.